Star Guardians. Quite the event, wasn't it? Well, to be honest, if you like reading or spend time playing and winning games, this event was actually all you could have dreamed of. As the modern standard for Riot Games' idea of content or event are pretty much just play Summoner's Rift games over and over and read a bunch of stories of a dating simulator, but with a little less eep this time, sadly. I am from that part of the community that will just press the skip all button here, but I have to say the visuals are looking really good, and the Kingdom Hearts sounds everywhere, they're really engaging. And if those, whatever they really are, aren't Heartless inspired, I don't know what they are. Almost made me read the whole thing. I wouldn't be able to tell, obviously, but from what I heard, the story actually wasn't that bad. So if we're not talking about the story, and we can't talk about the gameplay because, well, there is none, what could we possibly talk about? Sure, I could complain about people spoiling things ahead of the event, as is tradition nowadays, past being too grindy or too something, I don't know really, because I don't buy those anymore. For sure, could talk about the whole thing blowing up halfway through and breaking pretty much everything that was left from the content we got, but I mostly don't care about these things too much, and I'll leave other more qualified people to complain about that, I think. Well, to be precise, I actually do want to talk about gameplay, but just not the gameplay we got, the gameplay we could have got, gameplay we once had, but Riot somehow has forgotten about. I talk about the ancient art of League of Legends PvE game modes, and the Star Guardian event that could have been. But first, let's go back. Not chapter 1, no. All the way to 2017. Just like this time, it was the big summer event and the League world was hyped. New Star Guardian skins. Ari, Syndra, Misfortune, Ezreal and Soraka joined the Star Guardian family, and with that, the Star Guardian event took place. But with a little twist this time. Star Guardian Invasion. A very own game mode just for the event. At that time, nothing too special actually. We had new game modes, believe it or not, all the time. This one was special though, because for the first time in the history of League of Legends, people had to work together. Yup. For this event, Riot let go of that idea of League being a zero-sum game where one party has to lose so the other party can win. So instead of repeatedly queuing into Summoner's Rift on steroids, or Summoner's Rift on crack, we got a whole new experience in terms of League of Legends gameplay with an entire new map, but it was still the same old League of Legends we love or hate, or you know. So let's take a look at the game mode. A little recap for those that actually played it, and for the poor souls that missed it for whatever reason. Here is what it looked like. As most of the things in League of Legends, Invasion also was a 5-player game mode. So you either got yourself 4 friends, or let's be honest here, I mean, I know who I'm talking to here. You just queued solo and got yourself one of them temporary friends. When queuing, you then have to choose between the 2 difficulties, normal or onslaught. To be able to play onslaught, you have to finish the normal one first though, or queue up with a friend that has done so, and he can just choose the harder difficulty then. All of that brings us into Champion Select, and shockingly, you are now able to choose from one of the at the time existing 10 Star Guardians. The obvious comparison to an MMO dungeon here also dictates how to pick during Champ Select. In normal mode, it doesn't really matter, you can kinda do whatever you want to, but in Onslaught, you clearly want something that comes close to the traditional tank, damage and healer comp you see in MMOs usually. Or you're already restricted through the missions, but more on that later. For summoner spells, you could only choose between Flash, Ghost, Heal or Barrier. And another note maybe, the Star Guardian skins were obviously unlocked automatically, which was kinda nice to try out the skin in this game mode before you might have potentially purchased it. Also, it would kinda make no sense without it, I think. All of the theoretical part out of the way, we can finally load into Valoran City Park. That is the name of the map that we will be playing in. And according to lore, this is the place to be for a Star Guardian, but it was attacked by the Void. So obviously the Star Guardians have to come to rescue to save the day. So that means us, as back in 2017 we had this weird concept of lore being told through gameplay. A really weird thing. Glad they deleted it. So finally we load into the map, and pretty much just like every game, first thing you do, you buy a bunch of items. You have a bit more in your bank account than usual, and after every successful round, you level up once and get a bunch more money. That's pretty much the base idea of progression and unlocking your build path. As for items, a bunch were disabled for obvious reasons. Most of them are removed by now anyway, so I just kinda give you the list. CC Rod Portal, Ban of Command, Runan's Hurricane, all consumable items, all wards, and all gold generation items except the Frostfang line. Which brings me to the next thing right away. Every gold you generate through whatever way, be that through items, masteries, or runes, will be removed. So the progression will always be the same pace every single game, and you can't cheat the system in that way. Also noteworthy maybe, lifesteal will be increasingly weakened as the mode progresses, down to 60% strength for the final boss fight, which I mean kinda makes sense I guess, else full lifesteal builds would be way too broken as you could just heal up the damage everything does, and it's just kind of a meme at that point. So once done shopping, you click on that star, and once everyone's ready and done that, the game begins. And from here on it's just pure chaos pretty much. People run all over the place to kill all sorts of void stuff. But to make some sense, here's a little bit of order. There's 3 different types of encounters that can happen, with the first one being as basic as it gets, survival. And well, as the name suggests already, you have to survive a bunch of waves. In this case, the whole map is accessible and you can do pretty much whatever you want to. All you have to do is survive the oncoming waves of enemies. This can have a different look to it depending on what map you're on and what enemies you're rolling, and obviously the difficulty you chose in the beginning makes these encounters look very different from time to time. Other than that, you simply just defeat the multiple waves coming at you, with one wave ending once the last monster of it was defeated and the next one starting right after. If you successfully did so, you might queue into escape. Well, and as the name suggests already, in this one you have to escape. This is pretty much the equivalent of a escort quest that people love so much, right? You and your team are running along this path, and as the circle suggests, this is where you're safe. Riot calls this the Star Guardian Protective Shield. Outside of it, you take ever increasing damage, and well, inside of it, you're good to go. Well, literally. As you are simply just moving along with the circle and fight the oncoming waves of enemies. As is tradition, a game mode like this is finished once you reach your destination, which in this case is at the end of the road. Your familiar is already waiting for you, and the round is over as soon as you touch that finish point, meaning you can actually leave the circle preemptively. For example, Ezreal can arcane shift flash forward and end the game early. Now all that's left is pretty much combine both game modes. And we have defense. And as the name already suggests, we have to defend something. As I already mentioned, we're combining the 2 traits from the game modes we just showed. This works the following. After the first pack is defeated, we are getting yet another one of these circles, being the protective Star Guardian shield. But this time, crazy twist, it's not moving. So we're merely back to the survival game mode again, where we have to defeat waves of enemies, but this time, obviously, we're restricted to this very area here. This obviously making the whole idea a little bit harder, as running away and kiting is increasingly difficult. So much for the why and where. Now, let's move on to the who. You can insert a funny who ass joke here, if you need to. For everyone else, here's the monsters we're dealing with. To the untrained eye, this might look like a bunch of recolored League of Legends champions, but hear me out. Let's start with the Draggy Tail monster, which, yes, is the official name. And this thing, just like every other enemy unit in this game mode, has its own abilities and its own AI, which is a pretty big part of why this game mode was so good, as that part added a lot of depth and strategy to the rounds, because it was much more than just a few copies of League champions that randomly ran at you. So back to the guy that looks awfully close to Skarner and also has, which I'm pretty sure is just a mere coincidence, Skarner abilities. So the Draggy Tail is using 2 of those, one of which is the Crystalline Exoskeleton, or for you filthy casuals, it's the Skarner W. The shield and movement speed, with the only difference being that his shield isn't wearing off, so it stays until it is removed through damage. This ability is used to either run away from danger or engage onto a Star Guardian, as the second spell is, in true Skarner fashion, Impale. Skarner is either going for the closest enemy or he's hunting down a specific one. Once the ult connects, Skarner then attempts to drag enemies into dangerous situations, such as either outside of the Star Guardian protective ring or into the Vel'Koz ults you see, which we will talk about in a second. This effect can be interrupted though, either by disabling Skarner or straight up killing him. Moving on to the aforementioned Shooty Eyeball monster. better known as Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz comes in two variations, either the normal version or the huge version. The normal version is using plasma fission, Vel'Koz's Q, meaning he is firing the Q particles across the map. They fire continuously, they have a global range, they split upon contact with a Star Guardian. You can interrupt the Vel'Koz though, and they will stop firing for an extended period of time. Their strategies, depending on encounter, either they will aim for a specific Star Guardian or they just fire along a predetermined trajectory. The huge Vel'Koz though has the life form disintegration ray, or Vel'Koz ultimate. This one has a substantially increased duration and substantially increased range, which is enough to be global on most of the smaller encounters. At the end of the duration, or again if interrupted, it will not fire again for some time. Their strategy, again depending on encounter, is either following a Star Guardian, follow a predetermined strafe pattern, or work alongside the other Vel'Kozes to form makeshift arenas, in forms of certain patterns being built through all the ultis firing at the same time. So as seen before, if a Skarner ultis you and then drags you into one of these rays, you will have a lot of fun. Moving on to the Grumpy Burrow monster, or its worldly name of Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai as well comes in a normal and huge version. The normal version uses Tunnel, which damages all enemies she's passing through, to engage, then using Unburrow, which is usually used aggressively to disrupt guardians. After unburrowing, Queen's Wrath is being used, the 3 empowered auto attacks, which Rek'Sai tries to get off before burrowing again and attempting to disengage. The normal version strategy is to single out guardians and try to cause as much disruption as possible. Once unburrowed, they will stick around to attack a few times and then burrow again and try to run away. The huge version is having a Void Rush, which is telegraphed on the ground, is used to engage from a distance and damages all enemies she's passing through. After using Void Rush, Queen's Wrath comes in again, trying to get the 3 auto attacks off before burrowing and attempting to disengage. The huge version is trying to aim for as many guardians as possible with the initial engage. Again, stick around for the attacks before trying to disengage. Well then, there's Kha'Zix, or better known as Jumpy Slashy Monster. Kha'Zix is actually pretty straightforward. There's only one version of it, and it uses all 4 spells that it has in-game. It opens the rotation with the Void Spikes, waits for those to land, then using Leap as an engage. While mid-air of Leap, it uses Taste Their Fear to do damage. Right after the leap ends, Void Assault to disengage and stay hidden. Void Assault lasts exceptionally longer than usually, which means the next rotation usually starts out of the stealth again. The jumpy slashy guys are mostly just going for that casual drive-by attacks, and they don't stick around for long. They mostly just fixate on one specific guardian and will only do their rotation once they are in range. Another guy we have in store is the scary Spitty monster, also known as Kog'Maw. This dude also has only one version to him, is walking up into range, then channeling for a bit to then use Bio Arcane Barrage. It has a pretty big range and speed to it, and the max range of this ability is shown on the ground for the guardians. Both the channel and the effect can be interrupted by disabling, killing, or moving out of range. Doesn't sound too scary, but if you ignore those guys for too long, or well, if they are actually out of vision, they can melt you pretty quickly without you even noticing it. Those are also the most favorite targets of the Wriggly Bubbly monster, which sadly is a conjectural name as we don't know the official one actually. What does that mean? Well, outside of those being the only ones that aren't modeled after a existing champion, their spell is the Impunity Beam. This grants invulnerability and untargetability to an invading champion. So those little guys simply latch onto a champion, follow them around, and incredibly buff them. Getting those guys off of the champions is definitely your main priority, as you can't kill the champions otherwise. And when they latch onto a Kog'Maw, for example, he will shred through your team without you being able to do anything about it. And while we're at it, there's 2 more minion types that are pretty much just filler enemies. For one, there's the Voidlings, who spawn in swarms and are small squishy dudes who are melees and auto attack you. And then there's the Void Spawns, also spawning in swarms, small and squishy, but those actually are guaranteed to die in a single source of damage. With those out of the way, we come to the last champion. There is the big stompy monster, aka Cho'Gath. This boy also coming in a normal and huge variant, where the normal one casts Rupture around him continuously as he moves around the battlefield. The effect can be interrupted or disabled and so on, as you already know. The monster isn't focusing a particular Star Guardian, he's just trying to create as much chaos as possible. The huge variant also casting Rupture constantly, but has the addition of Feast. It selects a Guardian when it spawns and chases that guy down mercilessly, meaning one of the two will die. Once consumed, the Guardian is slowly digested, giving their allies the opportunity to save them, but well, if they don't, you die. If digestion is actually successful, the monster will simply select a new target. The strategy here is pretty simple. If you are the chosen target, you are the one running away and kiting, while everyone else tries to kill the Cho'Gath. As much as your teammates can let you down, your teammates are also here to help you. As you might have seen throughout the video already, if you die, you can be revived. You will leave behind your Starlight, and an ally can just stand on it for 2 seconds and will resurrect you. Both the Resurrector and the Resurrected will gain a brief period of invincibility. The Resurrector will also spend a bit of their health to save the ally, and the Resurrected Guardian's health will be based on the Resurrector. So if a very low HP ally is resurrecting you, you will also be very low HP. Also, your familiar dudes will, outside of being shopkeepers, drop health packs for you, which work kind of like the ARAM health packs. If you run into them, it heals the whole party. So that also leaves you with a choice, kind of like an ARAM, whether you are selfishly picking them up for yourself or you wait for an opportunity where you can effectively heal the whole team with it. But yeah, we kind of know how that plays out usually. So all of this nonsense pretty much leads us to one possible conclusion: a boss fight. I mean, what else would we do at the end of a dungeon? And in this very particular case, as you can see in the background, this is the big one. Pretty much the void monster that attacks the park and whatever, you know, lore. So this Rift Herald copy, as you can see, has some tricks up its sleeve. What we just witnessed was a charge. The big one rears back for a short duration and then charges forward, dealing damage to all enemies hit and knocking them back a substantial distance. This will also knock back other monsters, by the way. Then there's Riptide. The boss marks 3 centric rings on the ground that erupt simultaneously, knocking up and damaging enemies. Pretty much like Cho'Gath, but well, 3 times the fun. Throughout the fight at regular health thresholds, the boy spawns a random wave of monsters to assist his fight. So being unaware of this mechanic and bursting the boss too quick can actually lead to a really abrupt end, as you're simply being overpowered by a combination of stuff we have covered before in this video. Lots of fun. If you survived all that, you will eventually come across his ultimate move, so to speak, Volley. After a brief channel, a 360-degree volley of projectiles are unleashed that deal substantial damage. You can see it on the ground when suddenly the red arrows appear. Is often used twice in succession, but terrain is blocking the projectiles. So pretty simple, hide behind stuff. Getting hit by that ability more or less one-shots you usually. Just like every good boss, and also kinda like Rift Herald, there is a weak spot. Well, quite literally. The eye in the back opens up periodically, as we know it from Summoner's Rift, and you can deal a bunch of bonus damage to the guy. The big one is usually fixating on individual guardians to chase them down, but after every single spell cast he is swapping that target, which you can strategically use to your advantage usually, or to get multiple people killed, as you wish. But if, against all the odds, you actually manage to get the guy killed, which traditionally happens when his HP bar hits 1, then you do a bunch of beam stuff, you know, Star Guardian, the light, lore, you win the game. And then, as you can see on the right, you get your points for this round, and as you can see at the top middle of your screen, you get the Star Guardian rank for this full run. Why is that important? Well, because we haven't talked about the point system yet, and we haven't talked about the missions yet, you know? As in every event, there was free stuff. The score system is relatively simple. First of all, it only matters in Onslaught difficulty. The normal one doesn't have a scoring system. So upon completing a room, you'll be given a score and a letter grade up to S+. First of all, you will be given points based on how long it took you to complete the room. There's a target time displayed on the top right corner. More points the closer you are. Pretty simple. Target time doesn't exist on the escort mission because, well, there's no time involved here, obviously. Then you will receive bonus points for completing the room with no or very few casualties. This is even more important on the escort mission as there is no time involved, so you will get more points there. So once you're finished, there will be an average score across the entire run, while the boss room will be counted twice. This can be seen at the end of the game, as we've just seen, and also in the end of game screen in the client. So all of that matters matters because of the rewards. During the event, you had a special Star Guardian Mastery that was unlocked by default, but with the PvE game mode, you can unlock a New Horizon Ward and a Hextech Mystery Champion. Sure, compared to nowadays, those rewards, they're not too crazy, but that's mostly because back then, there was no need to convince the players to play the game through fancy rewards, because there was something else we had back then. But I might as well note here, the following year, we got a skin for free for the next PvE event, but that's a whole nother topic. So, here are the missions that you had to complete to get enough Star Guardian tokens to craft the 2 rewards, and to get the 2 icons to prove that you finished the game mode. And this is where the restrictions I was talking about earlier come into play, as for example, the first one is relatively simple. Play a game, you don't even have to finish it or win it, you just have to play it. But here, for example, you have to play the game in every single row. Finish Onslaught with an A or higher, or, and these are marked hard for a reason, you have to play as a pre-made group of 5, where you play a game without a marksman, 1 without a mage, and 1 without a utility role, which then made things like on-hit Ari or tank support Syndra a thing, and you had to be creative with your team comps. And it also gave you the variety that you had to play every single role to even finish all the quests. This one's more for the lore fans, because there you have to play the Lux team, and in the other one you have to play the Ari team. So pick the exact 5 champions of each team and win the Onslaught run. Which brings us to the hardest one and the ultimate one, win Invasion Onslaught as a pre-made team of 5 with an S or higher. Which wasn't as easy as it might sound now. Sadly, these missions were the only negative point the people found about this, and reasonably so. The missions are hard, they're grindy, they're repetitive, which arguably fits the style of a dungeon or MMO, but the fact that you have to play as a 5-man pre-made made those really hard, and for most people, they simply didn't bother. But Riot really learned from that, and the Odyssey event the following year, as already mentioned, not only gave you better rewards, but also had a way better system. But more on that on another time maybe. Also keep in mind, this was the first time Riot was trying out something like this in the form of a PvE version where you as the players fight AI, and for that I have to say the event was really incredibly well done. I personally enjoyed playing it a lot, and I even remember replaying it a bunch of times even when I had the missions finished already, because I simply enjoyed it so much. Yeah, so much about the past. This brings us back to the harsh truth of the present days. You know, call me old-fashioned, but I somehow have this idea that League of Legends should primarily be about games. You know, it being a video game after all. So League being a game but not actually getting any game play is kind of weird to me, but maybe that's just me. I would also even go as far as arguing that simply copy-pasting that old version of the PvE game mode and putting it into the game now with simply more guardians to choose from would be more than enough for a fresh and new experience, as sad as that statement is. After all, there have been a lot of lost souls that somehow, even though all of them knew that the chance was very slim to none, expected a PvE game mode. So how comes that people were that delusional to expect any form of actual content for the game? Well, one of the hints was Riot calling this the big summer event. Hindsight now tells us that big simply means it involves 3 games at once and isn't big for the game that you are playing. Big for Riot, not big for the player. But the maybe biggest hint was the fact that the teaser name is literally called Return to Valoran City. And as a player, we've been there before and could return. But that's also not what Riot meant. They're not talking about the player, they're talking about the Star Guardians. Maybe just a communication error, I guess. Also, hopium abuse, not a good thing. Don't do it, guys. All of this just kind of leaves us with the reality that League events or League content from here on forth will simply be a bunch of new skins, a little bit of a story, and a battle pass. My assumption is that League of Legends has simply reached that state of maturity for Riot where it's more about maintaining the game rather than actually progressing it. Which for Riot is a really good thing, but for the players still playing it, not the greatest place to be in. All that is left is simply imagining where we could be right now if Riot didn't abandon the idea of PvE game modes or game modes overall. The progression from the Star Guardian event to the Odyssey event, if they would have kept that going until now, again, one can only imagine. But that is all the time I have. I have to now go play some Summoner's Rift games and grind some artificial points because they will be reset in 3 months. I really gotta go.